This is the second episode in my Back to Basics series. These episodes are aimed at folks that are just starting out or want to get started cleaning up old tools. You can have a lot of fun and get decent results with minimal equipment. The only power tool I use in these Back to Basics episodes is the very affordable Wen 2307 rotary tool. George from You Want to Watch sent me these pliers. At first I thought they had been shortened down by a previous owner, but I looked them up in a Boker catalog. These are called short chain needle nose pliers, and they were available with or without the side cutter. When I spot a pair of needle nose pliers at the flea market or yard sale, I like to give them a couple tests before I buy. First, I like to see if these jaws are tight. I'm trying to twist them around each other. And these feel pretty good. I also like to inspect the cutter if it has one. Make sure it's not damaged. That looks pretty good. So this pair George gave me passes all my tests. The first thing I'm going to do is clean up these jaws so I can get a better look at their condition. I like to put a couple layers of heat shrink tubing on these pen brushes to concentrate the bristles. I got the speed set on about 3 on my Wen 2307 rotary tool. The heat shrink tube pen brush is also good for getting into these stamped letters. That pen brush did a decent job. Now I can see the serrations in the jaws. I did back here too, in this pivot part. Here's that lettering. It looks like the B and the O in Boker are pretty faint. I'll have to go easy. Clean this up. I don't want to lose the lettering. I think I'm going to tackle these flat surfaces first. Like I said, because of the light stamping of the B and the O, I'm going to have to be careful how much material I remove on this side. This side has a little bit of a gouge right there. Since there's no writing on this side, I'm free to go a little bit deeper and try to minimize that gouge. I have this rotary tool sanding pad kit that Big Vic sent me. It's like a rubber pad with Velcro on it and an 1/8 inch shaft to fit the rotary tools. And then the sandpaper discs have the fuzzy part of the Velcro. So you can stick the disc right on the pad like that. I get my speed set at like 2.5, and I got a 150 grit disc on the pad. I'm going to work on the side that doesn't have the maker's mark. I switched to the 240 grit disc. Now I've got the 400 grit disc on. I'm going to start with the 240 grit disc on this side. I just hope I don't delete those letters. Okay, now I'm going to use the 400 grit disc. Okay, here's both sides sanded down to 400 grit. This side came out really nice. This side still has some faint pitting, but I was able to preserve the markings. So for me, that's a good trade-off. That sanding pad worked out so well. I think I'm going to do these sides now. It seems like this hook and loop sanding pad rig likes the speed at about 2.5. And then technique wise, what I'm doing is I'm using just this edge. I'm working along the face like that, and I turn to check it to see how I'm doing. That's what's been working for me. While I was working on these sides with the 400 grit disc, I also went over these edges to soften them a little. I'm going to use my drum sander bits on this nose of the needle nose. I've got my speed at like 3 1/4, 3 1/2. And I've got a 120 grit drum. Once in a while I'll get one of these rubber mandrels that seems like it's too big to fit the sanding drums. Now I've got this screw just slightly snugged. What I'm going to do is use this sandpaper to take a little bit off the rubber. Alright, let's see if I took enough off. Okay, I got the screw loose. Here's a new drum. That slips right on, nice. Now the next test is, can I tighten it and get it tight? Looks like it worked. Now here's the nose sanded down to 400 grit. When I had the 400 grit drum on, I broke the sharp edges right here at the tip. The handles have the slight remnants of a seam. You see it right there? I think it's less prominent on this one. You can still sort of see it though. I'm going to use those sanding drums to get rid of that seam. I switched to a smaller drum to get into this area right here. Here's the handle sanded down to 400 grit with the sanding drums. My plan is now to take this coarse scrubby wheel and go over all the metal to blend in any of the sanding scratches. I'm also going to use that coarse scrubby wheel on the inside of the handles to clean them up. I've got the speed set a little bit past 3. Here's the pliers after the coarse scrubby wheel. Inside the handles came out okay. Now I'm going to use the medium red scrubby wheel. I still have that speed in the same spot, a little bit past 3. Here's the pliers after the medium scrubby wheel. They're looking pretty good. Everything looks well blended. My plan is to blue the handles, and Chuck and I are going to polish the head. Before we polish it, I want to go over the head with a ultra fine abrasive pad. If you haven't tried gun bluing before, I would recommend Brownell's Oxbow Blue. There are other products that can give a darker finish, but Oxbow Blue is the easiest to use and the most foolproof. The most important step in using any of these gun bluing solutions is getting the part completely clean. I'm using denatured alcohol. I'm sure acetone, rubbing alcohol, brake cleaner, all those would work too. If you're going to use brake cleaner, don't just spray the part. Spray the brake cleaner on a rag or a piece of paper towel and really rub it in. I like to go over the part multiple times, each time with a new clean piece of paper towel. My rule is, once I think I have it clean, I go ahead and clean it again. I'm using a cotton swab to apply the Oxbow Blue. If this were a bigger part, I might use a cotton ball. I try not to double dip. If I need more solution, I use a new cotton swab. I like to let it soak in for a minute or so and then just wipe it dry. A lot of times you'll end up with some uneven coloring, a little bit of blotchiness. This is a piece of 4-0 superfine steel wool. I just use that to kind of buff it and blend it. Can you see the blotchiness on that handle? Hope you can see that. Now it looks better. After buffing it with the steel wool, if you're not happy with how dark it is, you can clean it with the alcohol or brake cleaner or whatever, and then apply another coat. I think this looks okay. I'm going to stop here. I colored outside the lines a little bit. I'm just using this ultra-fine pad. Gotta fix that up. I think it'll do it. One more. That looks like that's working. I like to soak the part in oil, like overnight, after bluing it. I'm using 3-in-1. I figure while I'm here I can put some oil on the pivot too, huh? Let that sort of soak in and cure overnight. And we'll wipe it down. Watching the liquid patina ooze from the pivot never gets old. Chuck and I like to use these polishing wheels that are made up of many layers of fabric. I get the speed set on 3. There's probably a lot of good metal polishes available, but Chuck will only let me use flits. I gave the pliers a coat of wax. Any automotive or furniture paste wax would work. Okay, remember what these Boker short chain needle nose pliers looked like when I got them from George at You Wanna Watch. And here they are now. I like the contrast of the polished head and the blued handles. This is a piece of 16 gauge galvanized wire. Cleaning up old tools is a fun hobby, and you can get decent results without investing in a lot of equipment. I included Amazon links in the description for everything I used on this project. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.